All right, so we want to give you kind of an overview of how we see tasks happening in the classroom. That problem we just gave you, how long would that take? And I realize that question depends upon the age of the students. So another question would be, what age group of students do we give that to? And oftentimes good tasks will cross over different age groups. But this is kind of our idea about teaching with tasks. You know, and we try to, because folks have asked us, well, what does that look like? How much time does that take? And so on. And we all know whatever we plan for in a classroom usually doesn't work out that way. So we put this up there with the idea that this is not, you know, step-by-step process. But we need time to introduce a task and do that close read and understand the problem. Again, we think one of the things missing often in math classrooms is we give them problems to do and assume they understand what they have to do. And I think I would go back to one of Sue's favorite people, Dr. Phil, and I would say to you, how's that working for you? So we need to take the time to do that. We like close read. Mary said that some primary teachers would have students actually circle things as they went through and talked about it. So, I mean, there's lots of different ways you can do the close read, but the idea is to get the information out. Then there would be group work, and I think this also then lends itself to you rethinking how you group students up. Typically, we see high with low and maybe a couple middle. Well, you wouldn't want to do that here because your high students are going to take off and do something that your low students are not going to be able to follow, and they're going to shut down. So we think you might want to rethink groupings. You might want to have lows together and mediums together and highs together and then keep challenging those high ones. So just something to think about. We would also, as we did here, walk around the room, but one of the things we talk to teachers about is when you're going to give a task, can you anticipate all the different ways students may do the task? And that's hard because especially if you've had lots and lots of math, you tend to think one way and don't necessarily always see all the other ways. I think that's more true maybe depending on your age group. But you have to try to anticipate all the tasks, realizing you're going to find ones that maybe you didn't anticipate. And we even have teachers that write down on a sheet of paper, here's what I anticipate the methods to be. And then as they walk around the room, they look for different methods emerging. And kind of say, well, Group A did this method, Group B did this method, here's a method I haven't seen, I'm going to write that down, that's Group C. And kind of filter through that. They also walk around the room to monitor what's going on. If students are not on the right track and they're severely off the right track, we would intervene. Because you don't want them working for 15 or 20 minutes and then all of a sudden they realize, you know, they wasn't even close. Well, then it's, why should I even try this? But if they've made some small mistake, we would not intervene. Because as Sue said earlier, one of the positives out of these tasks is for students to talk about what they did, and if they did something wrong, either they realize it or other students realize it and help them. That gets into the practice standard of critiquing the reasoning of others in a positive way. And so we would walk around the room looking for that. The expectation would be students were going to present their solutions. Maybe not every day because we can't have everybody present every day. And we would make the decision then how many of those presentations we would have. But the idea is we would have them present and explain their solutions. And ask other students to ask questions and critique their reasoning. We would then, and this is extremely important, have some kind of summing up discussion. Getting from the students, what was the learning, what was the conceptual knowledge, what were the pitfalls, all the kinds of things we want them to come away with. We would not assume by them working on the task that's all going to happen. Because for different students it may and for others it may not. So that's a very important discussion. And then we would have some kind of closer. We believe in closers at the end of the hour. Closers can be, in general, problems they work, problem or two they work. It could be them asking them to summarize what happened during the period, talk about what they learned, talk about what they didn't learn, a variety of different things with closers. Some of you use closers, so you know that. But we would have them write about what they learned. 2 minutes. They would hand that out to us before they go out the door. We would not grade it, we would not hand it back, but we would look at it. It's actually, the closer's actually feedback for us to know how things went so that we're ready for the next day. So if it didn't go like we thought it went, then the next day we can make that adjustment before we walk into class and realize that, which sometimes happens. And then the homework would be maybe an extension of the problem, maybe it's just write about the problem, maybe if we get far enough and something's come out of it, we do a few practice problems. But the idea behind Common Core with fewer topics is we don't have to march through Section 1, Section 2, Section 3, quiz, test, done. The idea is we have more time to spend on things, and depending on the task, maybe the next day we do another task, maybe the next day we do problems. You know, it could vary from time to time. But this is kind of the structure for teachers about dealing with tasks. And we always say, take and modify anywhere you see modification necessary. Good teachers always take things and change them to make them better, and we would encourage you to do that. So that's kind of the idea. And the other piece of it is, some tasks that you may think may take 15 minutes need 2 hours. We know that happens. And so one of the key things with tasks also is, by the end of the hour, if they're not finished, they're not where you want them to be, and you can't do some of this, you at least have to have some discussion before they walk out of the room saying, what have we done so far, what have we learned so far, where are we at? Because if you let them walk out of the room in the middle of something and they're still confused, they're going to go home and say, my teacher did not teach us anything today, and I don't know what the heck happened in math class today. And you don't want that to happen. So you want to have some kind of closing discussion no matter how far you get through the task. And as Sue Edens talked about this morning, I keep forgetting Sue and Sue, you may not follow where I'm going. Sue Edens talked this morning about different kinds of tasks taking different amounts of time, and we see that happening in the classroom. Could be some tasks that take very little time, could be some tasks that take all hour. Maybe the task takes 2 class periods. So does that kind of make sense about tasks, that piece of it? This is some research that was done by Stein and Lane, and I think Smith might even be involved in this too. But this is really good research, and it was done with inner-city Boston students, so it was not an easy environment. And the research is this. If you have a high-level task and you implement it in a high-level way, you don't give it away, you don't give them the process or the procedure or how to do it, then the research is there's a high level of learning. And likewise, as you might expect, if you give them a low-level task, you tell them what to do, you get low-level learning. Does that sound familiar to the United States teaching to some extent? But the good news is, if you can come up with high-level tasks, even if you as the teacher screw them up, there's moderate learning. So we like to say high-level tasks are kind of teacher-proof. And that's not a negative statement. I'm just trying to be funny about that. So don't take that the wrong way. So this is nice research, and as I said, it's out there. You can search it. You can search Stein and Lane and look at the research, and there's even a book out there you can look at that Smith has written, and she does presentations, so that's all available.